request by Harvey Oyer of Schutz and Bone LLP on behalf of Clematis Banyan J5 LLC. Special review.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair. I think we might want to swear in our
Anyone that needs to be sworn
entire
in for this
team,
case.
some of which
wasn't
were
here
not here last time.
Yep.
Thank you. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Mr. Oyer.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and DAC committee members. This is another exciting project for our downtown. It accomplishes a number of objectives. I'm very proud to be a part of the team. Our entire team is here, the developer, which is the applicant, the Brand Atlantic Company, two outstanding architects, B+H as the design architect and Spina O'Rourke as the executive architect, Simmons and White as the traffic engineer, Rick Rikinis as the civil engineer, and Environment Design Group, Dustin Mizell as the landscape architect. So outstanding team, outstanding project. I'm going to dive right into it. Like the last presentation, I'm going to set the table for it, let the architects do the hard part, then I'm going to come back and talk to you about a variance request. So the site location is the west side of North Olive Avenue, bounded by Banyan Boulevard on the north and Clematis Street on the south. It is in the Clematis Waterfront District. This is what it looks like superimposed on top of the zoning map. The 301 Clematis site, which we probably all know as the Galleria building historically, lies within the Clematis Waterfront Conservation District, and just to the north of it, the 300 Banyan Boulevard site is within the Clematis Waterfront 10 sub-district, but it's also in the 10-12 incentive district, meaning it can go up to 12 stories with the transfer of TDRs. So the request before you this morning is DAC's special review of the site plan, together with two variance requests, the first from table Roman numeral 4-55, minimum active uses, and the second variance request from table Roman numeral 4-7, which is private open space standards. This is the development program. It includes on the 300 Banyan site, and by the way, this is one project combined, but for ease of understanding, I'm breaking it into the 301 Clematis and the 300 Banyan, but it is all one site plan, and as you'll see, very unified. But on the 300 Banyan side, which is currently a cracked asphalt surface parking lot and has been, I think, for all of our lives, it will be about a 98,000 square foot, 12-story Class A office building, 87,000 feet of which is the Class A office space, about a 450 square foot cafe, about 4,200 square feet of outdoor dining, and it is parked by a 6-story structured parking garage with 272 spaces. The 301 Clematis, which is the historic eligible building that we know as the Galleria building. Historically, it was known as the Hatches Department Store building. That is about a 42,000 square foot, 3-story commercial building featuring 28,500 square feet of office, a little over 3,000 square feet of retail facing Clematis Street, and proposed a new 7,000 square foot plus of food and beverage. I'm not going to read all of this to you, but this is the site data for zoning purposes. You may want to take a moment to absorb it. There are some unused development rights on the 301 Clematis site that will be utilized on the Banyan site. In addition to that, a handful of additional TDRs have been purchased on the open market, transferred to the Banyan site. Okay, so this is the more interesting part. This is a site plan of the proposed uses. So let's start at the top on Banyan. You'll see in that reddish color, that's a new proposed food and beverage on Banyan. The blue to the east of it is the office lobby. The red to the south of it along the west side of Olive Avenue is new proposed food and beverage that actually straddles the alley and utilizes the alley as part of the food and beverage operation and into the Clematis property. So kind of unique. You're going to have food and beverage operation on both sides of the alley that utilizes a new and improved, very much upgraded alley. As you move further south along Olive, the blue is the office lobby for the Clematis building, additional food and beverage all the way up to the hard corner of Clematis and Olive, and then retail or F&B along the Clematis side. And you can see along the left-hand side of the screen, 12-story office building will be on the Banyan side, and it has a 6-story parking garage beneath it. So taking the proposed elevation and imposing on it what the uses are, you can see where each of these uses would be located in the proposed combined project. And I am now going to turn it over to the design team. You can see who the team is composed of, and I think we're all here to answer your questions. So with that, I'll turn it over to my friend Keith Spina.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Keith Spina, Spina O'Rourke. Nice to be here. As usual, Harvey already kind of stole our thunder and showed you everything. But let me start a little bit. You know, we talked about the design team already, but I wanted to kind of emphasize a little bit about it. We, you know, have the opportunity to collaborate with different professionals all the time. This collaboration is not only the team here, but, you know, we've, the process so far, we went to PPRC, so we had all kinds of great input and collaboration with the city staff members and all departments. We've had, this is an ad valorem tax exemption project that we presented and had approved at Historic Preservation Board. So we had the pleasure of working with the Historic Preservation Board, which gave us some great guidance. Frederique Mittner, of course, you know, you guys all know her, what great input. And then we've had along the way, of course, Anna Maria and Chris have just been nonstop, as they are on every project in the city, giving us great design input. And then we have the team, you know, a couple that I want to mention specifically. Brand Atlantic, a development team, lives in this area, new to the market as a developer, but we had a lot of experience with a previous developer in town doing tons of great stuff. But the involvement that, you know, they're all here. It's Adam and Andrew and Craig and Bennett, and they are experts at design, and they, you know, enlightened us a little bit in the level at which we can take different parts of buildings as we design them and continue to improve on them. And then finally, you know, my Starchitect friends at B+H, Patrick Fahere, which you'll hear from in a minute. We love it. You know, we always wonder at the beginning, all right, is this guy going to try to show me how great he is, or is he going to, and he has just been phenomenal. We're so excited. You know, as you guys, I think most of you know, we have had the luxury of working on this corner, you know, at both Flagler Banyan Square, the Oversea, and then also 345 Banyan projects that we presented to you. And now we have the third corner. And then I personally live about 12 hours a day, about 7 days a week in my office, which happens to be facing this today vacant parking lot. But it's really exciting for us to be involved with it. And yeah, I can't wait for you guys to see what we're proposing today. Harvey's talked about the location. We all know it. A couple of little things I wanted to mention. So the 301 building today is a little different in that the second and third floor office in the office building lobby has always been on Clematis. So if you walk down Clematis, and you always see this relatively dark vacant space because it's a very big office building lobby for a relatively small office building. And so we very quickly said, let's re-engage Clematis, let's move the office building and lobby around to the Olive Avenue side, scale it appropriately, but then reactivate the Clematis frontage. And so we're really excited. And then of course the activation of the parking lot on Banyan and Olive is going to be incredible as well. Just some pictures of the site and the buildings. I think you guys know it well. This is what 301 Clematis looks like today. If you have been by there lately, we are currently in demolition and restoration of that building. So a lot of exciting stuff going on already on that building. The building had some, pretty incredible history. Meredith from Harvey's team did this incredible research that you can see starting in 1893. This was a building that was in this area. That's now the little historic building in front of the Northbridge Center. But it just shows the evolution of this building. And then the real significance happened when John Volk designed the Hatch building in 1936. And then it continued to be, similar variations of that. It was, as I mentioned, the Historic Preservation Board process had a very big impact on what we did and why we did things. but again, just kind of moving forward. I won't bore you with the plans, existing and proposed. Ground floor will be primarily retail. There is one thing that's a little special, and Patrick will touch on it, but we have an F&B, restaurant type use that we're planning for the north side of the 301 building. And because this is a unified project, meaning both properties work really well together, to the point of which we've even taken our dining part of this F&B, and it's actually on the 300 site under the building in this fabulous open space. And so, I think that the integration of these two projects together, continues to be not just mentioned, but really implemented well. The upper floors are going to be office space. Keep going. This is just what we've done to the 301 building. We removed all the windows and doors, and we are restoring it back to, what I like to think is we had that perfect image from 1936 when John Volk had finished the building, and that's what the building will look like, which we love. It's really a fabulous project. The materials, I'll let Patrick touch on those a little bit more, but we have incorporated a design of the buildings, including the materials that really tie the two buildings together. And so he'll touch on that a little bit more. And then that's what, our vision of what 301 Clematis in the foreground will look like when we're completed. And with that, I'd love to turn it over to Patrick to walk you through the 300 Banyan project.
Thanks, Keith. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
To Keith's point, one of the first questions as a design team, as a collective design team that we looked at was, how can we create a contextual response in terms of the massing of the building and how that might appear to be a derivative of the site? And we took a step back to look at that larger context. We noticed the horizontal datum lines from the existing 301 Clematis building and also the 303 Banyan as being critical junctures in the proposed tower, which would really be the springboard in terms of ways in which we could actually carve and sculpt the built form of the building. Combined with the programmatic elements and the vision from Brand Atlantic in terms of being the place to be with regards to workplace, what were the certain amenities that would attract the user, the Class A tenant? And was there a way to take that horizontal module of the office proposed for the Clematis building and look at how that might stack on top of the parking structure with a series of shifts, both horizontally and slightly vertically, sort of blending the indoor and outdoor. But really our main attention, or our first part of the exercise, was to look at how do we bridge the streetscape. And as both Keith and Harvey had mentioned, we are looking at having food and beverage dining opportunities that span over the public alleyway programmatically, but then architecturally, how do we look at the pilaster, the cornice lines, those historical elements of 301 to inform and become more prescriptive in terms of the architecture for the office building itself. So where the pilasters began to translate into the structure of the actual building and just the rhythm of the architecture as well as the landscaping and how we could integrate that, as well as providing some pretty unique amenity spaces within the building, both at what is becoming more of a large veranda as well as a terrace on the roof of the building. Our inspirational elements looked at sort of volumetrically how we could play with the massing of the building, creating potential terrace areas in office buildings that we found. We're actually seeing the terrace areas to be almost leasable outdoor space, but then also with sort of the whole life design and approach to workplace in a post-COVID environment is finding different places to work for staff, whether it's outside in an outdoor patio beside the cafe, on the terraces, the private terraces for the office, or even more the communal outdoor amenity space on the roof. And as well as looking at the parking structure itself in terms of, is there a way in terms of having that horizontal datum line echo in the parking structure, echo in the architecture, and work together as one building. So when we had our sort of our partee looking at that horizontal datum line, how that's defined in the parking structure and carried up into the office floor slabs, or the cantilevered floor slabs, I should say, and then just the facade composition and setting up the building proportions, the in and out of the facade, and of course, a finer attention to the fenestration. Just looking at that in a little bit more detail, taking one particular bay of the 301 Clematis, its vertical fenestration and combination of horizontal datum lines, and how that is reciprocated or echoed and translated into where we have a projected mullion in our curtain wall glazing, and how that is carried on through the facade. Some existing photographs of the alleyway in its current condition, and how do we, as a team, search for inspiration in terms of activating what could be a repurposed alleyway that would carry that energy and activity across the streetscape. So from an image of today to having more of a inboard F&B outlet on one side, and then more of an extroverted outdoor dining experience, still within the protection of the parking structure above, meanwhile taking that horizontal element, bridging that across the alley, potential opportunity for an art component, exterior lighting, different types of seating, and a different amenity experience that really becomes more of an outdoor space than indoor, but creating a larger outdoor urban room. So when we look at the overall floor plan focusing on the 300 Banyan, as Keith had said, this area in pink is for the most part an outdoor space. So we have this little bit of the push and pull of the public realm into the building, the lobby. If the 301 Clematis building was more of a jewel, this was seen as a jewel box with the cafe and the outdoor patio, so providing a lot of opportunity in terms of activating the base condition of the building. As we go up to our parking levels, we have about 45 parking spaces per level. As Harvey mentioned, a total of 272, and this really became a game in terms of how efficient our core could be with having our drive aisle and those critical dimensions to fit the parking stalls within that floor plate. As we move up to the first level of the office program, we have our more indoor-outdoor office amenity space that would have some feature water elements, but really an area to hang out, have a group class, and have that mix of indoor and outdoor spaces. When we look at our office floor plate, you can see in the darker blue the actual occupied area, about 15,000 square feet. And again, that idea of that push and pull happening and alternating as we move up in pairs of slabs through the building. You can see the extensive terraces that wrap these two corners and then alternate to the opposite two corners as we work our way up through the building. The roof terrace up above, concealing any kind of rooftop mechanical equipment, and then how the buildings in sort of their final elevations, how they fit within the context and that collective West Palm Beach city skyline, and seeing sort of the transition from the podium to the more tower-like components. But really what we were looking at is how do we unite both the lower and upper portions of the building into one. So as Keith mentioned, some of the historical inspiration, but also some of the feedback that we did have with presenting the project to the Heritage Board, and a request to have a little bit more attention to the finer grain, like the rounded corners of the 301 Clematis building, a little bit more attention to that, the linear horizontal elements within the building. And we moved from an initial concept that had a kind of a stark difference between the base and the upper levels of the building. And with carrying over more of those finer lines of the more delicate lines of the existing building and really highlighting some of our more cantilevered conditions and roof slab, took that and kind of an inventory of sort of the stigma associated with some of the vegetated parking garages and some of our own inspiration, and realizing that maybe if we paid a little bit more attention to that edge of slab detail, we could have something that was a little bit more finer and a little bit more architectural, and something that was contextual to the building. So looking to some of the inspiration to the south, we've sort of refined the design to have this as our current proposal, which shows that edge of slab condition of the parking carried up almost as a stack of cards that are floating and elevating as we play with the interstitial floor-to-floor heights of the parking structure, and extending those and accentuating that with the upper levels of the office to have quite a significant cantilever at the edge of slab. So there's this slight ambiguity in terms of what are the more solid occupiable spaces within the building versus the more open air outdoor terraces of the building. So when we talk about exterior materials, we really used 301 as a bit of a stepping stone, and in terms of its material palette, and wanted to carry those materials, that kind of warmer palette into 300 Banyan. So you can see some of the underbellies of the cantilevered office floor slabs having more of a warmer material palette, and then playing with the right, both the reflectivity of the glass as well as also the tint associated with that glass to have a certain degree of activation within the facade, and not having that facade being fully reflective that might appear ominous. We also like this stacking of the building because it gave the opportunity that potential tenants could see their space as one of a collection of potential office spaces, sort of an office building stacked on top of an office building, a collection of leasable units. We took that one step further in terms of also looking at what the potential lighting could be, and noticing at the precedent on Lincoln that they were very selective in how they concealed the sources of their lighting, and went on to look at what is the appearance of this building at night, and could there be a way that we similarly conceal our lighting and clean the underbelly of our parking structure, as well as accentuating our office floor slabs with a very clean look, and even went to the extent of making sure with the lighting designer in terms of the spacing and location of those sources of light, in terms of being respectful to our neighbors, as well as gaining that overall architectural appearance. The next few slides look at kind of a before and after in terms of how the building fits within that urban fabric, in terms of its street edge and its articulation. Here we are at the corner of Olive and Clematis, slightly in the background. So the Clematis building was always sort of at the forefront from this perspective, and the 300 Banyan sitting in the background at a perch overlooking the harbor from this perspective as well, facing east along Banyan. And this is actually a view from Keith's office. He was concerned in what that might look like, so we superimposed the building. And here at this level of detail, you can see how there's a bit of a progression from the radius corner of the parking structure slabs, and how they transition to more of the sharper corner of the office building up above, and ways in which we've tied some of the circulation of the vehicular traffic within the building. Just views, this is, of course, the Class A corner office view with the terrace beyond. And then as well, sort of a view of that, the grand veranda or outdoor amenity space. And again, seeing sort of the pairing of the two office floor slabs with more of the recession or recessed with still emphasizing some of the structural elements that contribute to framing the views to Palm Beach. Again, sort of how the building, even from a further distant perspective, in terms of how it's integrated into that fabric with our building positioned right here. Of course, also views of Flagler Park. Another view, aerial view from the east. I'm going to ask Harvey to come forward to complete the remaining elements of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. So these are your Dac Standards of review for the special review portion. I won't dwell on these. We comply with all of them. Staff concurs. I'd rather spend some time on the two variance requests. I alluded to what they were at the beginning of the presentation, so let's take them in order. The first is the minimum active use requirement, and there's actually two different categories here. But let me first cite the actual language from the code, which you see in the first bullet point. The code defines active use as, quote, a use within an enclosed building. Now, I won't read the rest to you, but the important part here is the enclosed building, and that is because we are seeking variance from the ground floor, second floor, and third floor active use requirements. And when I say it's broken into two different pieces, there's two different reasons why we don't meet it. So the operative definition language of enclosed building applies to the ground floor portion. And that's because all of this F&B operation that has outdoor dining does not qualify under the code as active use, though I cannot imagine anything more active on the street edge than a whole bunch of people dining on the street edge. But if it is not enclosed, it does not count. It's a weird nuance of our code. So on the clematis side, if we have an F&B operation, or on the olive side of the 301 Clematis building, that is enclosed, that counts as active use. But once you cross over the alley onto the 300 Banyan property, unless we were to enclose it, it counts against us. So it's a bit of semantics, I think, but I wanted to point that out to you. In short, we have a very heavy active use all the way around all three street edges, but under the definition of the code, we cannot count it all. That's under the ground floor category. If you look at the second and third floor categories, this is the identical issue to the project that was in front of you previously, which is we're part of Flagler's original plat of the town of West Palm Beach. We have a narrow lot depth, and by the time you account for all of the other requirements of the code, the sidewalk width, the setback requirements, the setback off the alley, all of the drive aisle widths, parking stall lengths, et cetera, there is no real estate left to put an active use liner. So those are the two different categories of the same variance request. So let's examine that a little bit more closely. I think the graphic will help illustrate my point. So if you see the red lines, that is the active use that we are providing according to the definition of the code. Now, I'll point out we completely meet it on clematis. So we're not talking about clematis. We're talking about olive, and it is all considered one frontage because it is a single unified site plan and project. But where you see this 4,000 square feet of outdoor dining, even though all of this will be occupied by human beings, it's not enclosed, therefore it doesn't count. This 14 feet of alley will completely be occupied by human beings does not count. If we were permitted to count that, we would far exceed the active use requirement in the code. We're not allowed to count it. Same with this 790 square feet of outdoor dining on Banyan. So that is the reason for the ground floor active use variance request. We think in spirit, intent, and purpose of the code, we meet it, and in fact, we exceed it. And I would even encourage your group to consider some sort of amendment to the DMP language to address this, as we find ourselves in a world where more and more people are dining outside, where almost every municipality in Palm Beach County over the last year and a half has had to change their code, or at least institute a temporary code change to permit outdoor dining, which is where we all want to be during the COVID world, which does not appear to be ending and may not end. I think our code needs to adapt and account for this. Now let's talk about the second and third floor issue. Again, it's identical to the prior matter that was in front of you on Datura. Let me just skip to the math part. I won't go through every variant standard because it's identical to what you heard earlier. I want this in the record, but I don't think anyone here is challenging or questioning it, and your staff supports it. So to use your time wisely, we won't do that. I will point out other examples of this being granted. So this is commonly granted. Here's sort of the graphic that I think helps illustrate it the best. These are all code required minimums. And as you cross-section through the property, you simply run out of feet to have a second and third floor active use requirement. So we believe we meet all 10 variant standards. Happy to go back and discuss them if you wish. So we do have mitigation measures in here that I would like to put in the record. The project, as I said, proposes 2 outdoor dining areas on Olive and Banyan, which have direct view to and direct interaction with the adjacent streets and the public. The 300 Banyan building has been designed to correlate with the 301 Clematis in terms of floor height, architectural detail, vertical and horizontal rhythm, colors, and material, so it appears as a related or unified project. The garage ramps will be designed with architectural detailing and horizontal cables to de-emphasize the appearance of a parking garage. And the alleyway between the 2 buildings will, of course, be brought to life in, I think, a very new and innovative way in our community, and it will feature new lighting, likely artwork, paving, drainage, public art, hardscape, landscape. This is the existing condition. I know Peter showed it to you, but I'd like to emphasize this because we have talked for years about activating our alleys. I know the DDA, and I think Raphael is here to speak to it, has attempted publicly funded programming to do this in the past with some success. But this, I think, is the first example, and Raphael can correct me if I'm wrong, of private money activating a public alley, undergrounding utilities, putting in paver bricks, landscaping, artwork, lighting, and taking what is presently, I know we've all walked this at night, kind of a scary experience at times walking past these dark alleys. And it greatly improves the safety and public realm. And so this is what it would look like. And I hope this sets the standard for every other alley in our downtown going forward. That is a spectacular adaptive reuse of an otherwise underutilized waste of 14 feet in between every block of our downtown. Now, the second variance request is also a bit of a nuance in the code, and that is our private open space requirement. It only counts as private open space if it's open to the sky. Well, as we've also experienced in the COVID world, it's hard to utilize outdoor space in South Florida 12 months of the year because it's either too hot, too much sun, rain falling on you for 6 of the 12 months of the year. And we can see that all over our community. I was at a county commission hearing yesterday, and when you're on the 6th floor of the county governmental center, a block away from this, when they designed it, they put big outdoor terraces on both sides of the county commission chamber. And in my 23 years of going there, I've never seen one human being step out there. And there's a reason, it's not covered. You're getting rained on, you're sweating, it's completely unutilized. We don't want to repeat that same mistake that is a block away from us. We want to cover it. But how can we make this feel like true open space even though we want to cover it? And the design is to make that a 2-story height covering and make it open on all sides to truly give it a feel of open space while still providing protection so that our tenants and guests can use it 12 months of the year instead of 6 months of the year. So the code requires 25% private open space. We far exceed that, by the way. We exceed that by quite a bit. But we are in front of you for a variance because it is covered above. This is what that level looks like, and it's level 6. Everything that you see in blue is the private open space. The code requires us to have 7,531 square feet of private open space. We are providing or proposing 10,950 square feet, far exceeding what is required. But again, it is proposed to be covered, which results in a large variance request of 73.7% of the proposed open space. Peter put this up before, but I think it bears putting on the screen again. This is what it would look like. Note how open it feels, how many active uses you can put in that private open space relative to the dead private open space that we're accustomed to in so many other buildings in the downtown. And I think this is the way of the future. And again, I encourage your board to work with staff and consider making some changes to the DMP to account for this, because I imagine there will be more of these coming, particularly when this building goes up and the public finds the far more useful and attractive. So these are the variance standards. We meet all of them. Again, I'm happy to come back to them if you'd like to, but I believe staff concurs with us, all 10 variance standards. So our recommendation so far, we have a staff recommendation of approval on both the special review portion of today and the 2 variances. We did go in front of the Historic Preservation Board on September 28th, and they recommended approval of the historic designation nomination for the Galleria Building, 301 Clematis, and approved pre-construction ad valorem abatement for both properties, 301 Clematis and 300 Banyan. And I have to say, as a person interested in local history, this is a great opportunity to finally designate that building and return it to the way it looked when John Volk did the design that I think is the most notable design in its 120-year history, get it back to looking the way it should look, protecting it for perpetuity, and that was not otherwise going to be done. So in sum, we respectfully request the approval of the special review and the variances. I will note that we agree with all of the staff recommended conditions of approval with a couple of exceptions, which I think staff will cover, and that is condition 2A is going to be deleted, and we would like to reserve the right to work with staff on the variance condition requiring an art installation in the outdoor dining areas should those F&B operations go dark for more than 6 months, not because we're not agreeable to it. We just want to understand some specificity around it, what that art installation would have to look like, who manages it, what the process is it done through AIPP? We just want more clarity on that, but we don't fundamentally disagree with staff. We simply ask that you direct that we work with staff to come up with some clearer parameters on how that would work. And with that, I think we are concluded, Mr. Chair. Stand ready for questions or staff presentation, whichever you.
Perfect. Why don't we go ahead to staff, and we'll come back to you.
Okay,
Thanks. That
thank
was a
you.
very, very good presentation. Thank you all.
Good morning, Ana Maria Ponte, City Urban Designer for the record. So the applicant did a very thorough and extensive and inspiring presentation, so I'm gonna be very short on my part. The staff part of the review is related to the special review standards. As you know, we have the 4 special review standards. The first one is the relationship of the building to site and surroundings. As the applicant went through all the process that they took to make sure that the building fit the context, staff supports the project on that relationship. We think the way the design was crafted fits not only the relationship with the historic building, but the context in general, and the specificity of the building design for the 300 Banyan. It's a well put together building that relates to the context. The transparent parking transition to the tower element, we believe, is also a very good approach to this. And I'm going to go into detail a little bit more on that afterwards. But in relationship with that standard, the same way that the applicant explained, the activation on the ground floor is going to be a substantial improvement from the current conditions. Staff agrees with the outdoor space for dining and concurs with the applicant that despite does not meet exactly the language of the active uses, the outdoor dining definitely will activate the street. So that will relate to the variance request that the staff is supporting. The additional streetscape along the 300 Banyan Boulevard, it's also a height improvement. We even explored the possibility of maybe adding something in front of the olive frontage for the 301, but due to site constraints, we could not widen that sidewalk further and reduce the travel lane, so it was not possible to add any additional landscaping there, but it was explored as part of the project. In terms of the traffic circulation and traffic flow, as the applicant explained, the entrance to the parking garage is from Banyan Boulevard. The applicant is proposing 272 parking spaces. That is a very low parking ratio, actually, for an office building. Once you calculate the new office space plus the existing office on the 301 Clematis, the ratio that they are proposing is basically around 1.9. That is way below the 2.5 that the code required. They meet the requirements because the only parking requirement is for the new building. The 301 does not have any parking requirement. They're doing a little bit more from the minimum, but for the combined project, but for the 301, but that is to fulfill the needs for the 301 Clematis. So we are very happy that they are not doing more parking. That talks about the urban context that the downtown is moving more and more, so people are starting to understand that they don't need so much parking. There are other parking facilities around the area that can be shared, so we're happy about that. In terms of the valet operation, the applicant is proposing a valet operation with drop-off on Olive Avenue and pick-up on Banyan Boulevard. This was a really controversial item. It had extensive discussion with the traffic engineer to ensure that this was workable. At this point, staff is accepting this configuration with only drop-off on Banyan Boulevard and pick-up on drop-off on Olive Avenue and pick-up on Banyan Boulevard with some conditions of approval. We received the information provided by Simmons & White on the traffic report, and in general, the operation of the level of service is still is acceptable for all the surrounding intersections. So we have one condition of approval for the traffic. In terms of the traffic, we have a couple of conditions of approval that staff is recommending. The first one is one that we put in all the projects, and you probably are familiar with, is to request the project to be sure that the sidewalk elevation across the driveway on Banyan is maintained. So the pedestrians have a continuous flow and they don't have to go down to the driveway and go up to the sidewalk again. And then the second one is that the applicant will continue discussions with the city to determine if the westbound left turn lane proposed for removal with Banyan Boulevard Complete Streets project needs to be restored. This is the condition that the applicant mentioned before. They are requesting to be removal. We have, the applicant has worked with the traffic engineer, and traffic engineer has accepted the removal of this condition at this point. So this was included on your staff report. For as part of this presentation, we are removing this condition. The third condition for the special review is the valet operation shall be monitored for impacts on traffic, and if any impacts are identified on the flow of traffic on Olive Avenue or Banyan Boulevard, the applicant shall implement certain mitigation measures. We left this condition general at this point. The applicant will be working with the traffic engineer to include more specific list of what will be how the monitor will occur and how the mitigation will happen, and that will be included as part of the site plan approval letter. And the last one is in reference to an additional planting strip on the south end of the Olive Avenue drop-off area and the west end of the Banyan Boulevard. And these are just two continuous planting strips to avoid the cars that are just trying to get into the drop-off area, stopping in there and getting off. So we think that if the landscape is put in there, at least there's a cue that is not ready for getting off the car at that point. Those are the recommendations for the circulation. In terms of the building design, the applicant went very extensively explaining how they came up with the design. As I said before, we think it's a very well put together contemporary design. I never thought that I will be in front of you supporting an exposed parking garage like this one, but I think the applicant has done a great job and it fits the project and the context. I believe is not setting a precedent because of all the nuances of the design of the building and how they have it structured, the horizontal levels of the building and how they relate to the historic building and the adjacent. So staff is in support of this design in terms of having this parking that does not have the traditional architectural treatment that we usually recommend for garages, but the way the horizontal lines have been designed as part of this overall project makes sense for this particular project. And I just stated again, because we don't want this to be a precedent for other projects to come and say, hey, you allow this parking exposed without the traditional architectural treatment. So in this case, in this particular case, in this context, this treatment makes sense and works very well. That is for the special review standards, so general staff supports it and it complies with all the standards. In terms of the active use variances, as the applicant explained, they are asking for a couple of variances. The first two sets are related with the active uses, and the first one is regarding the active uses on the ground floor. I'm not gonna go over the numbers, but staff totally supports this variance because of the activation provided by the outdoor dining spaces. On Olive Avenue, the restaurant, the outdoor dining for the restaurant that is located on the south side of the alley will activate that frontage. And actually on Banyan Boulevard, staff work with the applicant to include an additional coffee shop or additional food and beverage on the Banyan frontage that will activate also that additional outdoor space along Banyan. So we believe with those two elements, the project will definitely be activated on the ground floor, as is the intent of the code. Yes, it needs a variance because it does not meet the exact definition of active uses, but it will be fully activated. And that goes to the condition that we are recommending for those two spaces that states that in the event that the restaurant and coffee shops are vacant for more than 6 months, the developer shall implement an art installation plan to activate the outdoor patio areas. We discussed this condition with the applicant late yesterday, and we agreed that we can refine this language. Our concern is just basically to be sure in the event that for some reason the restaurant or the coffee shop do not make it and the space is vacant. So we want to be sure that these open spaces are actually activated and don't become some eyesore for the community. So we are open to discuss what is the detail of that art installation, of if there is any other option for activating that space in the event the commercial space, the food and beverage, is vacant for some time. The other set of variances related to the active use are regarding the active uses for the second and third floor that are required. Again, I'm not going to go over the details of the percentage of the variances, but we support this also due to the context of how this particular design is fitting the relationship with the historic building and the context and the details of the design itself of the 301 Banyan Boulevard, where they have this very particular design where they have the ground floor as the lobby and then these very transparent floating levels that constitute the parking. Definitely, there is a hardship of how to make this project work in terms of parking. As I mentioned, they have a very low parking ratio. If they have to comply with the active use requirements, that will basically make the parking very inefficient to reducing one of the parking levels or lanes, parking stalls in each of the levels on either side, and will result in an additional parking level that we don't want. So they are definitely doing the minimum parking that they need to make their project function, and we support that. And we think the design that is presented is it's appropriate for this particular case. As a condition of approval for this one, we would like to include recommendation where the applicant works to ensure that no exposed utilities will be allowed from this hanging from the ceiling of these parking levels within 20 feet of the frontage to avoid any visual clutter for those very lean and clean slabs that they are proposing. The last variance is regarding the private open space. Again, the applicant went very well through the details of these requests. Staff totally supports this request, and as he mentioned, this is one that we identify with them and concur that is probably something that we need to adjust on the code. Having this open space cover will probably make it more usable for the tenants and mainly for office uses. I mean, we have private open space required for the residential buildings, and we have not had any issue with that because usually it's the pool deck, which is open to the sky. Everybody wants the sun. But in the case of an office use, it's a little bit more challenging, and to make these spaces really usable and enjoyable and an asset for the office, probably having that cover, a large percentage of it cover, will make it more appropriate. So this definitely is something that staff will be interested in maybe bringing afterwards a code amendment to allow that to happen. In this case, it makes sense to recommend approval for the variance. They are making these spaces double height, and they're going to be a great space and great asset for it and very enjoyable. So we support this variance from that perspective. That it's in general what our analysis is. Staff recommends approval for the special review based on the findings that the petition meets the standards as indicated in section 9454B2. As I mentioned, condition 2A is proposed to be removable, but the other ones stayed. And then regarding the variances, staff also recommends approval for the variances from table 455, incentive building requirements, to allow the ground floor active uses along Olive Avenue to be reduced from 236 feet to 186, and along Banyan Boulevard from 120 feet to 80 feet, based on the finding the petition meets all the 10 variance standards as outlined in Article 2, Section 9438D6. The recommendations of approval for this one is that in the event of the restaurant and coffee shop are vacant for more than 6 months, developers shall implement an art installation plan to activate the outdoor patio areas. Staff also recommends approval for the variance from table 4-55 to allow the second and third floor active uses along Olive Avenue to be reduced from 178 feet to 152 feet, and along Banyan Boulevard from 110 feet to 0 feet, based on the finding that the petition meets all the standards, the 10 standards as outlined in Article 2, Section 9438D6. Staff recommends that no exposed utilities shall be allowed to hang from the ceiling within 20 feet of the garbage facade. The last variance, staff recommends approval for variance from table 4-7, open space standards, to allow overhead cover within a private open space terrace type based on the findings that the petition does meet all the 10 standards as outlined by Article 2, Section 9438D6 of the LDRs. In terms of notification of public input, a notification of the meeting was sent to all the property owners around 500 feet of this site. That concludes the staff presentation.
Okay, thank you. Very good, very thorough as usual, and thanks again for applicant and staff working out so many of these issues prior to presenting to us. It makes it very clear and easy. Okay, we've heard from staff, applicant. A couple cards here from people in the audience. Rafael Clemente. I think this is the right case now.
Good morning, Rafael Clemente, Downtown Development Authority. Perhaps I'm piling on now at this point with support for the project, but The applicant presented to the DDA board last month, received unanimous support for the project, and for several reasons. First of all, Olive and Clematis is main and main for our city, and having the historic restoration and designation of 301 is a huge win for our downtown core. I spent about a decade in that building. It gave me a lot of time to imagine what it could be. Brand Atlantic has shown us what it can be. Furthermore, the addition of the office space on, as Harvey called it, the cracked parking lot back there is another big win for us. It's something we need. It's also putting that much activity there, that intensity of people close to the core. It's going to be a great thing for our downtown businesses for sure. The ground floor activation, not just the addition of the outdoor seating, spanning the entire almost the entire length from Banyan to Clematis, but also reconfiguring the ground floor to appropriately work now for retail and restaurants at the Clematis and Olive Corner is another big win. As Mr. Spina described, that lobby was just completely ineffective there. So when it's reconfigured now, it's going to be a much more tenantable space for people to put their businesses on our main street. The alleyway, I can share with you a lesson we learned with the Subculture Alley, which was, it's public space. You all probably know it. It's just west of the Clematis Garage, west of Quadro Boulevard on Clematis Street. That alleyway, which has come to be known as the Subculture Alley, was long inactive. Once the current tenant there took that space, activated the alleyway, it's now been improved with artwork, with better pavers. One thing they have always tried to do is cover it. It's an ongoing conversation. It's being retrofitted onto the garage with some sort of awning, hopefully. But that space is a very heavily used, effectively public space in our downtown, but covering it would make it even that much more effective. So the proposal to span the alleyway with a cover to allow that continued activation, I think, is a really great idea. It's sort of, I think, in terms of activating alleys in our city and turning them into more than just back of house, that's sort of the futuring of our place, because if we're going to really be able to address these big, deep spaces on our main street throughout our downtown, figuring out how we span those blocks is really the key to doing that. So the alley, I think, is a great step forward. In terms of design, I think between the architects and Anna, they said all that can be said, so I encourage you all to support the project. Thank you.
Good.
The request for variance, I should say.
All right. Thank you, Raphael. Kevin Fox?
Thank you. Kevin Fox. I own and live in a condominium at 101 North Clematis Street. 2.5 years ago, I moved here, invested here, not only for what West Palm Beach offered as an urban, because I was able to research plans in the works at that time for development, and I totally support development. West Palm Beach also offered what I thought was a size that was rational development for future development of the urban area. Previous 10 years, I lived, owned as a very active citizen in South Beach, Miami. In fact, the Lincoln Road garage that was illustrated many, many times, I know it very, very well, having dined in the fine restaurant Juvia and bedded into that. I would actually, when people visited out of town, take them to the garage. I would take people as a destination to a public garage, which is emulated in this fine presentation. After this presentation, I really have only one comment, but it was my main comment to come here. And regardless of the intentions of what the development is about, this fine presentation that was developed, is the fact of asking for a variance for a covered terrace on an elevated level. There's a very simple, while you're doing it, is invest in noise abatement that goes with that. Whatever the intended use is today, 10 years ago, it's an inviting use as a de facto indoor space that's emulating noise outdoors. When there is not, when there's covered space, noise, which would generate upwards, does not. It has a resounding effect that comes sideways and downwards. And doing it now in this fine development, investing in noise abatement, and if the variance was granted, And noise abatement into whatever that covering was is makes it fine as respecting citizens. All we have to do is, whether I walk my dog in the fine, beautiful park in front of the Ben Hotel, or if I linger for a few seconds at CVS, empirical experience of my ears can tell what happens when there is that noise abatement coming from elevated levels down. People hear, all you got to do is hear it. So you have a chance now, if this variance was granted, to have the insistence of noise abatement be part of the construction of whatever that covering is, which would absorb the sound, which is going to emanate outwards. It would come straight at me. I'm looking right at it myself on my terrace, but it's going to come downwards into the entire city for future use. That's all I have to comment.
Okay, good point. Thanks for your commentary. Appreciate it. Any other comments from anyone in the audience? Okay, we'll then close public discussion on this case and go ahead and have questions from board members for staff or the applicants.
I have one question for staff. The alley west of where the new public space by the new property owner, once it's developed, will there be continuing access for other property owners on the alley, or do they have to, I mean, how will they get in to get to the back of the properties west of the project?
Well, the applicant is showing the activation for the alley, but we purposely, from staff perspective, did not include it on the staff report because that is a separate conversation that needs to take place of how really that activation is going to happen, with what permissions, during which hours. The alley is still a working alley and service all the businesses on Clematis, so it's not that it can be closed permanently. So we are not, that does not is not included as part of the approval that you're seeing today. So
Okay.
the intention is to work some way that the seating can be maybe expanded to the alley, and they can, definitely the service is gonna cross from the restaurant on the south side to the outdoor dining on the north side. But how the closure of that alley will happen during certain hours a day is still a work in process. We have not reached any agreement or detailed negotiations for that, and will be subject of a totally separate approval.
Okay, yeah, I got the impression that it was going to be closed, until
It's not.
the,
No.
until west of the project. I might have a couple questions for the developer, but not any further for staff.
You
Should
can go ahead
go
and do
right-
that now. We'll just, let's get them all of that.
First project is fantastic. It seems like every time we see a new project come through, it's better than the last, and we're just setting the bar higher and higher. So I look forward to seeing this project come to fruition. With the garage, is there going to be any lighting elements at night that's going to be visible? I mean, in the renderings, it looks, pretty dark. Is it going to be lit up at all, or is that, I guess, level 2 through 6 pretty dark at night?
I think Patrick is probably best situated to, or is it Keith? Who knows the lighting plan the best?
I think they had a slide showing that night lighting on there.
I might have missed the slide for
Yeah, I
night.
think they
Yeah,
did
so we
address
had
that.
a slide, I don't know how to pull it back up, but
Okay.
we've gone through great level of detail working with our lighting consultant. And, we were able to study the Lincoln garage, and the garage will be illuminated, it has to be by code, a certain level of foot candles. But what we don't want to see is when you walk by, drive by, or when you seeing a bunch of light bulbs that you can see from outside. So we have lights strategically placed in a way that, there you go. So this is actually a detail of the light that's mounted in the floor. And, I think Patrick had mentioned it. We've even located it in the plan of how you illuminate the ceiling of the garages to meet code, so people can safely come in and out of the garage, but not be able to see light bulbs from the street. So,
Okay, yeah, I know we probably went through that when I met. I just missed that slide and just kind of wanted to get a feel for how bright or dark it would be at night. I'm sure it would be darker if it was completely enclosed. So the fact that there is light that comes out is, I just wanted to get a feel for that. So, and the new property owner is going to be completely responsible for maintaining that alley, in essence, taking it over? Or is the city still going to treat it as their own alley after this project is developed?
So the alley will be owned by the city. It's still a public alley. We would have a license to use it, and the equivalent of a landscape maintenance agreement, which most developments have if you want to improve the sidewalk or landscaping in front of your project. It'd be a very similar document. We have not entered into that yet with the city, but it would belong to the city, but we'd be responsible for upgrading it and maintaining it.
Okay, and so that'll be in perpetuity moving forward once you make that agreement, once you
Yes,
sign it.
or for so long as the license to use it.
Okay. I think those are my main questions. Again, I think it's a fantastic project, and again, I think this team has set the bar very high, and it's exciting to see these projects just continue to look better and better and better. So that's all I have.
Go ahead, thanks. Gregory, you got any comments? No? Nick?
Great presentation. Thanks very much. Good luck. It looks great.
All right, Brian?
I just wanted to ask a few technical questions. First off, beautiful project. I'm really glad that you showed the 1111 Lincoln Road garage, because if that's what you're aspiring to, then you're on the right track. And I'm kind of freaking out here because I don't know how many projects came before us where we've tried to screen garages and we put up faux this and faux that, and this is the first time we're seeing something that's a little bit higher elevated, higher order design solution. My question is twofold. The cars look like they're parked very close to the edge, and the second part of that is, what's the barrier condition along the edge of it? Because that has to be as light an area as possible. And we know if there's a true safety factor, and there's also the perceived safety factor. People are afraid they're going to drive over the edge, but that has to be as light as possible. So yeah, super inspirational. Let's get to that level. I think you're there. I just want to know some of those things, because are we going to see the cars right up to the edge of that, or are they going to be set back a little bit so we have a little bit of relief from that, so we're not seeing a row of cars?
So the barrier is the easy one. It'll be a cable, light, very airy. The part of the transparency is what started with our design inspiration, continued with historic preservation, and continues today to create this really unique architecture. So it's a cable railing exactly like you see here. And the other thing that's interesting here, and I don't know how to zoom in on this, but there are cars parked right along this on the Lincoln garage. And so the cars are parked, the physical dimensions of the property is part of the challenges with screening garages in the city. So the cars will be there, and it's a garage that holds cars, and you will see them. But the intent is, as you see in this real life, I like the gentleman that spoke, and he took his friends from out of town to see this beautiful architecture, and it happened to be a garage. And so we're going to treat it the same way. The cars will be at the edge, very transparent cable railing, meets all the building code requirements of a car not going off the edge. And so those are all things we've been working on and we'll execute on.
I think the carrying over the horizontal elements, very, very strong, rounded on the lower levels, squared up at the office, very strong architectural statement. The negative space created with, creating that movement in the building is very powerful, beautiful project. But we have to be really, really careful with the garage to make sure that this is we get it right out of the gate, because this is the first time we're doing this. So yeah, I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
Freaking out, man.
We agree with you.
Just letting you know.
Anna Maria
Can't tell, but it's happening.
Yeah, Anna Maria shared the level that we've all talked about, even some of the, one of the conditions that talks about how we treat elements that are mounted on the ceiling in the building. That's why we went through this level of.
Thank you, Mr. Spina.
All right, Brad, you got anything?
Yeah, I echo the sentiments. Great project, great team. Seems like you guys have thought of everything. I also share the concern with the visibility of the cars because of how many times we've been asked to figure out screening with applicants, and here we're close to the street and in a very important corner, and we're going to have 6 floors of cars we're all staring at. So it's a little that's a little concerning. I have a question about the outdoor dining. Of course, I'm tremendous favor of outdoor dining. I think we all like it, in this day and age especially, at this time of year especially, but I think, as Harvey pointed out, there's a significant portion of our year where it's either hot, it's full of bugs, it's raining. Rain doesn't fall straight down here. Most often, a two-story roof isn't going to really provide much relief for rain. It is, and you've probably thought through this ad nauseum, but is there another way to, and I'm in favor of the variance, to allow it to cover it, because I would like it to be used, and in fact used year-round. Is there another way to make that space usable year-round with either a lower roof, and I'm not speaking for the rest of the board, but I'd grant the variance for a lower roof, to make it more usable, retractable doors, something that would make it usable when it is hot, when it is rainy, when people don't want to sit outside.
So we agree with you completely. You know, it's whether it's driving rain, too much wind, it's too hot, and all of this. So this is kind of, you know, we've started at this very early stage in this project consulting with experts of not only restaurant operators, but, you know, experts in the world that design outdoor facilities. You know, we were fortunately involved in the Lizabetta's, which has an enormous outdoor dining venue. And any given day you go, it's too hot, it's too cold, it's rain, it's sun, and you have to have some protection. So this starts to show how we've been thinking about, you know, and we don't know where it's going to go, but introducing elements that allow you to protect the environment. And maybe it's only for 20 minutes, but you have to protect it, or the whole, or you have a full restaurant and 20 minutes of disruption by rain is a disaster. So we have been studying it. We think we have great solutions. We have to ultimately get a operator and implement it and make sure, you know, the city supports it all. But it's a great point, and we've been working on it, you know, for a long time, and we're confident that we'll be able to execute on it. So
Is enclosing it, I mean, enclosing it with a two-story roof, I get that's not possible, or maybe cost prohibitive. Doesn't make sense, I get it. But has it been ruled out, a lower roof with retractable sort of folding doors, maybe like?
Well, yeah, I mean, that gets into the whole FAR and how much area you're allowed to enclose a building. But we think there can be some roll-down screens that protect and immediately go back up. They've been used really effectively in, you know, F&B venues around West Palm Beach area. You know, Elizabetta's an easy one. It's just across the street. But it's when you start to fully enclose it, it's more FAR, and you know, and we want it. I mean, today's the day, right? You go outside today, and everybody's going to be sitting in the outdoor seat, not on the indoor seat.
Sure.
And so we think we've been able to accomplish a really successful F&B operation that takes into account all the things you just mentioned.
I don't have anything further.
All right, good. Everybody get a chance to speak? Yeah, I'll just pile on. I think it's, fantastic project. There's so many good things about this project. I won't repeat them all, but the historic preservation component, the outdoor spaces, it's a unique piece of architecture. You know, looking at West Palm Beach, you should talk about the downtown skyline. I don't even know if there's a real true single identity to West Palm. It's very eclectic, and I think this years down the road will fall into the category exemplifying this period of architecture. So, I mean, at least all your floor plates aren't twisted 3 degrees, but they are offset and staggered. So very, very unique, very interesting. I echoed the comments to you previously, ex parte in the parking garage, and I think you guys have done a great job addressing all those components to make it really sculptural and unique and crisp. My only critique would be the team placed so much emphasis on this datum between the Galleria, so the question first to preempt that commentary would be, is that, and maybe Friedrich can answer this, isn't that building monochrome, and is there really a big heavy stucco band above the second story? If you go back to that image, like back one or two, you show the corner, keep going backwards. And you're changing the color of the pilasters right there. That heavy band above the pilasters, does that exist?
The physical architectural detail does exist, but the paint accentuates it here. So I'm Frederique Mittner, City Historic Preservation Planner, and because it's being accentuated by the paint, we're fine with it because we don't regulate paint color. It is subjective, it is reversible, it meets all the preservation standards. So the actual elements do exist, it's just painted.
Yeah, because I think that building just has a certain subtlety to it. I think that's why it's so successful, is it's subtle, it's monochrome, it's just in the shadow lines and details, which I think is more exemplary of that architecture. I think this kind of detracts from it and dilutes the quality of that building. by emphasizing the change there. And then going to the new building, I know you guys have talked about the datum line and the relationship, and I'm not even sure it's that important, but I think you're matching that band, and the bulkiness of that band is diluting the crisp, modern technical qualities of this project, or what it could have, and I think you should maybe just revisit all that. And I don't know if the
team's
material...
willing to go with a monochromatic approach to the Clematis building, we're fine with that. That
Yeah,
was
I mean, that would
driven
be
by the
my
design team.
recommendation, just to keep it the way it is, because I think it's a better building that way. But when you guys look at the new building, again, I don't know if your band on the new building is that anodized aluminum or just painted stucco?
They're
It's
indicating
aluminum.
it's aluminum.
Yeah, anyways, you might want to revisit it. Again, I understand how you talk about the datum and the implied relationship. I don't really think it's working physically between the two buildings, but I think it could be more successful if you treat it the way the tectonics of the rest of your design are. I think it's like you describe it as a jewel box. It's more technical, it's more precise, and this gives it a more clunky quality, the whole thickness of that first floor plate. So just a thing to think about, maybe restudy, but maybe there's a connection at that upper level line over the alley that connects the building at the higher level with lower level planes. But in any event, it's all probably a minutia, but I think it'd be a much more successful building if you got away from that clunky connection, visual connection anyways, and kind of went with your instincts on the rest of the structure. So, but anyways, my comments, great project, no problem with the variance request. I think it's all a huge benefit for the city, so I'm in favor. Anybody want to make a motion?
Motion to grant a variance. I move that the Downtown Action Committee approve the variance requests included in DAC case number 21-03 as follows. 1, a variance from table 4-55 incentive building requirements CWD 10-12 to allow the ground floor active uses along Olive Avenue to be reduced from 236 feet to 186 feet and along Banyan Boulevard from 120 feet to 80 feet. 2, a variance from table 4-55 incentive building requirements CWD 10-12 to allow the second and third floor active uses along Olive Avenue to be reduced from 178 feet to 152 feet and along Banyan Boulevard from 110 feet to 0 feet. 3, a variance from table 4-7 open space standard to allow overhead cover within a private open space terrace type. This variance approval is made conditional upon the restrictions, stipulations, and/or safeguards listed in the Planning Division staff report dated December 8, 2021, that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning code and consistent with the downtown master plan and the comprehensive plan of the city of West Palm Beach as follows. 1, no exposed utilities shall be allowed to hang from the ceiling within 20 feet of the garage facade. This motion is based upon the testimony presented along with the application submitted, which constitutes competent, substantial evidence that the standards in section 94-38D6 have been met.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, did you mention condition A?
I thought you were eliminating A.
Not that one.
So you want me to read in A as well?
Sorry, I think
I thought in the event restaurant and coffee shop are vacant more than 6 months, I thought you were working on that with the developer.
But we would like to keep it, just
Okay.
add maybe some language and
Okay.
say we will work the
I'll
details
read it
with
in.
the developer.
A, in the event the restaurant and coffee shop are vacant for more than 6 months, developer shall implement an art installation plan to activate the outdoor patio areas
Or work with the applicant.
Or work with the applicant to come up with a
define
viable
what the
solution.
Right, okay. Sounds good. Motion, is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, that carries, and then special review.
Granting, make a motion to grant the special review. I move that the Downtown Action Committee approve the special review for DAC case number 21-03 as listed in the staff report dated December 8, 2021 with the following conditions. 1, sidewalk elevation shall be maintained across the garage driveway on Banyan Boulevard. 2, traffic conditions. You're eliminating, Anna Marie, you're eliminating A,
Correct.
and I'm making this the new A. Applicant shall monitor the valley operations, and if negative impact on travel lanes is detected, mitigation measures shall be implemented by the applicant. 3, an additional planting strip shall be added at the south end of the Olive Avenue drop-off area and the west end of the Banyan Boulevard pickup area. The motion is based upon a determination that the testimony presented at this hearing, along with the applications submitted constitute a preponderance of competent substantial evidence. The board hereby makes findings of fact that the special review requested satisfies all the criteria of the City of West Palm Beach Zoning and Land Development Regulations, Article 2, Section 94-52B2.
Okay, motion, is there a second? Second, discussion?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, it should also say 94-54 instead of
Okay.
52.
All right, so noted. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, motion second, no further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Good project. Good luck with it. Yep. Okay, so new business, old business. Let's see. Code revision. Okay, any unfinished business?
We don't have
Any
anything
new business?
else?
No? Okay, anyway, so yeah, end of the year, everyone. Happy holidays. Enjoy. Thanks for all your hard work, staff, as usual. Anna Maria, Rick, Chris.
Thanks,
Thank
Anna
you
Maria.
very much,
Friedrich,
everybody.
and you
Happy
guys
Thanks,
have
Chris.
a Great holiday. Meeting adjourned.